Welcome back, true believers and spectacular Spidey fans, to another really awesome Spider-Man PS4 related video. So before, in my previous videos, we went over what comics you should read in order for you to prepare for the story. We went over the swinging and why I thoroughly believe that the swinging will totally beat Spider-Man 2's. And now we are going to be going over and looking at some things during the E3 2017 gameplay demo that you might have not seen when you first saw the demo. If you have seen these things that I'm about to mention and discuss and talk about, good for you, but for other people, they might not have noticed these really interesting, cool factors within the gameplay demo. Some of them are obvious, others are kind of really obscure, and really other things are just flat out incredible. So without further ado, let's get into the first unknown and hidden thing that you might have noticed when you first saw the demo because you just had that instinct in your head that something was different. I know I definitely had this feeling, and it is that the logo is different now. So if you look on screen right now, and also the first shot that we see of the trailer, Spider-Man jumps down, and you get the reveal that Spider-Man's finally back. We finally get another showcasing of Spider-Man PS4 with the E3 2017 gameplay demo, and you see his costume, and his logo has changed. The white logo in the same suit design from the E3 2016 teaser trailer is obviously still there. They still kept that whole design. They didn't really fully change it like they did, for example, with the Amazing Spider-Man 1 suit and then the Amazing Spider-Man 2 suit. The suit is totally still the same. It still has the white logo, except now the logo is a bit more aggressive. It looks a bit more aggressive, and also it stands out more. That way I can identify thoroughly that that is Insomniac's Spider-Man by the logo. Because the complaint, or at least a comparison that a lot of people were giving with the first logo that we had, is that it reminded a lot of people of the Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man logo, which is very understandable, and I get that. But now, with this new logo, as you see on screen, the side-by-side comparison, the right logo is much more aggressive. The pincers are more sharper, because before it was just kind of small. They were just kind of poking out at the top of the spider's, top of the logo. Now it's more aggressive. Now it looks a bit more like the black suit logo in a bit. I know it is not part of the symbiote. The symbiote is already said from Insomniac to not be involved in the story, but mainly the logo now is very much more identifiable as Insomniac's actual Spider-Man. Because before, again, people were thinking it was the movie outfit or the movie logo. Now it's actually a really cool, identifiable brand logo that Insomniac has made for their Spider-Man. Second one, boats. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, New York is packed. In the streets, we see people walking, we see cars driving around, but one thing that I found really cool that I was seeing the demo again and also seeing it for the first time is that in the background, when you see the ocean in the beginning of the trailer, in the demo where he's swinging towards that construction site for Fisk Tower, and also where you are fighting the inner demons for the first time with full-on combat, in the background, in the New York Ocean, you just see New York boats swimming across, floating across New York City, just hanging out in the New York Ocean, and it's crazy cool. The level of detail that Insomniac has given their city in this game, with New York City looking totally packed with life and civilians doing their own thing, going on their day-to-day business, and just seeing boats actually just going and floating around in the ocean is very cool. Hopefully we don't have to save any of them, because in Spider-Man 2 that was super hard, saving people from boats in all those side missions in that game. If we do, that's going to be awesome. And I can't wait to see what Insomniac does, if it's just a cool thing showing how packed New York City is, or if they actually have some sort of side mission variable in regards to saving people with boats, or whatever, but we'll just wait and see. Next up is the Web Strike takedown range. So, as you saw from the teaser trailer, where Spider-Man dives after that one inner demon and knocks him flat out in his face with the Web Strike maneuver, because that's what they call it in the demo, that it actually says it in the bottom right hand corner. It says Web Strike Takedown, press triangle to execute a Web Strike Takedown. The range of the Web Strike Takedown is very important as well. If you see in the demo, you see that the first time where we see gameplay, it cuts from the cutscene to the gameplay. Spider-Man's on this scaffolding, he jumps off of it towards an inner demon, and he tries to stealth takedown him. However, even though he's like only 1 or 2 foot lengths away from the inner demon, it still gives you the option to Web Strike takedown him. Even though you are literally like 1 or 2 feet behind him, you still have that option to actually go and perform a full-on web strike takedown towards that inner demon. So what my thoughts are, and what I think this is actually the case, is that it says triangle for a web strike takedown and square for a normal takedown. So square is a stealth takedown, and triangle is like a more loud takedown. If you do a web strike takedown, you will most likely be able to be noticed by the other inner demons, because that's another thing. The interviews that Insomniac have had at E3, they said that none of the demo that we saw was scripted. None of it was planned out. It was all totally free. You could have done whatever you wanted. You could have done stealth, or you could have just gone in webs blazing. You could have swung after the helicopter that one way, or you could have just gone after it another way. So everything in that demo was player choice, including the stealth, which we saw. You can either full-on stealth take down enemies, or go out webs blazing and try and take them out as hardcore as you can, which, seeing how that option is very cool, and I can't wait to see what other type of features they can implement within the game's mechanics. So moving on, holding down L1 is how you use the L1 button. If you see in the demo where we see it a couple times, mainly the main 2 times is where the first time where we see the inner demons in the first part of the demo, Spider-Man uses his webs to pull that small crane forward to knock 2 inner demons out at once, and then moving on to the second combat sequence where we see more inner demons on top of the Fist construction tower, Spider-Man uses his webs to pull that entire giant scaffolding metal structure towards 3 inner demons at once, knocking all 3 of them out at the same time. And if you look closely at the L1 button prompt, it kind of highlights over it with white. It kind of fills up the L1 button with a white bar. So that indicates to me that you have to hold down L1 in order to execute those throwing moves, in order to throw people across the map, or throw objects at people, or throw environmental objects to take out people in style. That is used through holding down L1. So moving on, we have web shooter variations. So what this is that you guys have probably seen it. We saw 2 web shooter variations within the demo. There are most likely way more than that in the game, because again, Peter Parker is a scientist in this game, which means that he has the ability to most likely upgrade his web shooters to give him more practical uses in order to make sure that he's a more efficient Spider-Man during stealth and combat, and also traversing around the city. But mainly, the 2 gadgets that we saw was the web trip mine and the web shooters in general. So the web trip mine, we obviously saw it. He shot the web trip mine device at the side of a wall. It stuck the inner demon to that wall automatically. And then the second use of the web shooters is the normal webs. He uses this 3 times in the demo. The first time is that you see him knock that one inner demon up in the air, and then he slams him down onto the ground, which then drains the web shooter meter on the upper left-hand corner of the screen, and then it refills over time. The second time he uses it is where he's taking out the last inner demon in that first combat sequence, where he shoots a web wrap around the person, which causes the inner demon to be wrapped up in web, because you see him shoot little web balls in the inner demon's faces to temporarily stun them or blind them, but then when you see the web meter being used, it wraps an entire casing of webbing around a person. And then the third time we see it is again with the heavy inner demon, or as Insomniac calls them, the inner demon bruiser. They call them the bruisers, but it's just a heavy guy. And then you see on the top left corner that he uses the web shooter again to try and wrap up the heavy inner demon, but then he obviously tears it off because he's so strong. So you see that they are using these web shooter variations very thoroughly throughout the demo. And also, even though we don't see it in the demo, the web trip mine has lots of other uses. The one use that we saw, like I said, is that he shoots it at the wall and the inner demon gets stuck to that wall. In interviews, Insomniac have said that there are way more uses for that device that you can do in the game. Another option is that you have an inner demon in front of you. It's a stealth section, and you have to make sure that you stealthily take down all the inner demons. You can shoot the web trip mine on the back of an inner demon, causing that to stick to another inner demon and have them slam into each other, taking them both out at the same time. Another option is that you can also use the web trip mine on the ceiling. You can use it on the ground. So if you're on the ground, you can knock a guy up into the air, and then they can get slammed down by the web trip mine. Or if you're on the ceiling, you can stick it to the ceiling, and then you can just have a guy walk directly underneath the web trip mine, and then just have a random web come out of nowhere and stick them directly to the ceiling. And another option for it is that you can use it during combat. You can strategically place the web trip mine wherever you want throughout the combat sequences, so that way you can set up a nice trap for villains that you are fighting in the main combat sequences of the game, which makes you think really on your feet and makes sure that you keep on your toes to fight in a very smart way. So continuing, there was no countering during the combat. So what I mean by that is that a lot of people already are comparing the combat to the Arkham combat from all the Batman games. They're also comparing it to the amazing Spider-Man games. I understand, because the Arkham games are the quintessential footnote for all superhero games. However, if you want to go far back, Spider-Man 2 technically is the first installment of Arkham Combat because of how that game fully inspired the Batman Arkham games with that game style of combat, but mainly with the combat in this game. But don't worry, I'm going to get into a whole nother video about the combat, so don't worry. But mainly to go over the combat initially and seeing what it is really about, is that throughout the whole combat sequences, but primarily the first combat sequence, Spider-Man never countered. He only dodged, just like he does in Spider-Man 2, Ultimate Spider-Man, Web of Shadows, and Shattered Dimensions. Where there was no countering, there was no instance in where he took a Inner Demon's attack and then flipped it across on that Inner Demon. He used a finishing takedown where he made that Inner Demon punch himself with that web takedown technique during the combat. But throughout the entire time while he was fighting, he either jumped over people, he dodged, he leapt over people, or he flat out just dodged their attacks and bullets throughout the combat and slid underneath them. He never countered throughout the main fighting of the game, which harkens back to all those Spider-Man games that I just mentioned with their great combat, and seeing how Insomniac is taking cues from those games, it's very, very cool. So next up is close quarters combat. This was really interesting, and it was actually pointed out by the amazing Lucas and Shakta, and ELT Network as well. Was very, very awesome, where they all pointed this feature out, is that when you are fighting the Inner Demons in the first combat section, you have a bit more of an outer camera for Spider-Man. You have an outer camera, he's a bit more out, and you have more area to look around your surroundings and take out these Inner Demons. When you are fighting the Bruiser, the Inner Demon Bruiser, it's more up close and personal. You can clearly see that the camera's pulled in more towards Spider-Man, and he's also doing that stance where he's kind of in a spider landing pose and dodging very accurately and cool, and you have more close quarter combat when fighting that mini-boss. So hopefully there's going to be more scenarios where they are implementing that feature. Maybe when you have a boss fight with a main boss like Kingpin or Mr. Negative, they will hopefully do that as well, which just shows on how dynamic the fighting is going to be in the game. And next up, we have a really fuzzy heads-up display, or the HUD. So going back to the close quarters combat for the heavy Inner Demon, the only time Spider-Man gets hit throughout this whole demo is when he actually fights the heavy Inner Demon. And most likely, I believe the developers want to do that just to see what it looks like when you do get hit by an enemy. But if you look closely at the HUD, everything goes fuzzy and starts staticking out when you get hit by an enemy. As you saw, it went from 100% health to 80% health, and the entire HUD started to freak out. It like fuzzed around, so that just shows it's a really dynamic HUD in the game. So if you die, it's probably going to totally freak out and everything, but the fact that you got hit and you lost 20% health in that demo, and then that causes the HUD to freak out, is very cool, and seeing how that little feature of just cool gameplay mechanics is implemented within something as simple as the HUD. To continue, we have one of the coolest things that I think that no one noticed in the game, and again was pointed out by the one and only amazing Lucas. He did a video on it, he talked about it briefly, but I'm going to try and go more in depth about it, and that is the web tunnel. Throughout the majority of the demo, you see all these options in the bottom right hand corner. Mainly you see it to perch. You see it to perch on the beams, to perch on the things when you're swinging, to perch on some fire escapes, all that stuff. But mainly when you're chasing after a helicopter, when you crash through that hotel sign, I didn't even notice this, but on the bottom right hand corner, it actually says web tunnel. Not perch, not swing, not crawl, not web strike, just flat out web tunnel through that hotel sign. And it's funny because we've actually seen this 3 other times. If you include that one scene, what you're seeing right now, that's one time. The second time is where you go to take out Mr. Negative in the helicopter after that parkour scene. He does the same maneuver again, except you don't have to press R2 and L2, you just press triangle, because then you're actually executing a semi-boss fight within the game, when you go on and fight Mr. Negative on the helicopter, that kind of transitions from parkour to a cool up-close boss fight with Mr. Negative. And you see him do that same spinning technique when he dives through the helicopter. That's also a web tunnel. And the third time, at least I think this would be a nice, accurate representation of the third time, is the parkour scene in the E3 2016 trailer when he's going through the cafe. He does that same technique where he pulls himself through the window and crashes through the glass and then goes onto the other side of the city. That also seems like a maneuver for the web tunnel. So hopefully, and again, Brian Intaro already said, the creative director for the game, he said that you can do parkour indoors, outdoors, wherever you want through the city. The parkour still applies, and something like the web tunnel will most likely have the same effects, where you can do it inside of buildings, outside of buildings, when you're just traversing around. Maybe if you're just freely traversing and you're not chasing after a helicopter or something, maybe you can go through like a certain sign that has like a hole through it and you can dive through it really cool, just like Spider-Man did in Spider-Man 2, where he dives after Doc Ock through that scene where he goes through that little tiny crevice. Hopefully we can do stuff like that, because that would be very cinematic and very awesome. So the last two things, we see people on rooftops just chilling. What we saw with the scene where people are just having some hot dogs where the helicopter's crashing, that is a cutscene. But also when you're swinging around, when you're chasing after the helicopter, if you look in the background, there are indeed people on rooftops minding their own business and going about their day, once again showing how cool and totally hugely packed this whole city is going to be, with civilians and people just doing their daily business. And finally, this one was already kind of given if you are a Spider-Man fan and you read the comics and you are caught up on everything, and also mainly if you have seen the trailer for Spider-Man Homecoming, you'll recognize this face. Obviously, we see Miles Morales at the end of the game demo, but mainly the friend that calls out his name, Miles, that's most likely his best friend, Gank. Gank is Miles Morales' best friend, and as you can see near the end of the demo when he calls out Miles, that looks just like Gank. He lost a bit of weight, which is pretty good. He's probably hitting the gym, but as you can see, that definitely looks like a very good, accurate representation of Miles Morales' friend, Gank. But as you can see with Miles, Miles has more proper facial detail, and Gank doesn't really, at least from what we see, because we only see a side shot of him, Gank doesn't have that much facial detail on him yet. Will he have a role in the story? Will we see him alongside of Miles throughout the story? We don't know, but I think that most likely is Gank, and it's cool that they're including him within the Miles Morales part of this story. So that is all, everybody. Those are all the hidden things that I could find throughout the Spider-Man PS4 E3 2017 gameplay demo showcase. If you found anything else, please let me know, and let everyone else know in the comment section down below. I hope you enjoyed this video, everybody. Stay spectacular, Spidey fans. Peace out.